Now, I'm sure you've heard people saying a college degree isn't worth what it used to. With mass layoffs in the air, and the horror stories of people applying to hundreds, if not thousands, of postings before finding a job, the labor market seems worse than ever. At the same time, the stock market is at all-time highs, with the White House citing jobs and wage growth in addition to low unemployment and inflation rates. The recent jobs report was described by the media as a blowout.
Shows that the jobs market ended 2024 with a bang, and this is really good news for Main Street, right? It shows that workers are still very much in demand.
The president called today's jobs report great. In December, U.S. employers hired the most workers in 10 months.
This is a solid economy, a robust job market.
But to suggest that this report was anything uniquely spectacular would be misleading. While non-farm payrolls increased by 256,000, the breakdown of jobs created shows that over a third were from leisure and hospitality or retail. Low-paying jobs that indicate a weaker economy with underemployment more than anything. Additionally, retail jobs gained following a loss of 29,000 jobs in November, so these gains are minimized in the context of that and seasonal hires that will disappear in the new year. Even gains in healthcare are overblown, with half of those new jobs being in care facilities and care services that also do not pay well. Major industries in high-paying sectors like information technology, finance, and professional services saw little to no change, indicating the continuation of the white-collar job recession that began in 2022. The truth is, the job market as a whole has not recovered from the pandemic. Companies by and large overhired during the Federal Reserve's zero interest rate policy in the post-COVID hiring boom between 2021 and 2022. What happened after was a reshuffling of available jobs, with available white-collar jobs stagnating, while two-thirds of jobs added back have been concentrated in four sectors: education, healthcare, hospitality, and government. Current labor force participation rate is 62.5%, a rate not seen since October 2015 and significantly below the pre-pandemic high of 63.3%. What this tells us is that the amount of people employed and seeking jobs has not recovered post-pandemic, and this is not even taking into account further population growth, net immigration, and new graduates. All of them additional factors that add to the extremely competitive job market we have today. Stock market performance is a leading indicator of how our economy is doing today, with all-time highs correlated to record corporate profits. But these high prices do not illustrate how the gains from the stock market are distributed. Increases in stock prices helps shareholders, not job seekers. What rising shares entail is an increase in current profits or something that increases the expectation of future earnings, both of which can be achieved in the absence of job growth through cost cutting or the creation of new revenue streams. It's true that wages have been growing, but citing wage growth ignores the fact that purchasing power has been significantly eroded during the pandemic from record high inflation, leading to an accumulation of lower investment growth as well as lower savings to offset the challenging economy today. A closer look at the unemployment rate tells us that it is a flawed measure of employment outcomes. The formula is the number of unemployed people over the labor force, with the labor force further comprised of employed and unemployed people. This rate is an undercount, excluding anyone who has not actively looked for work in the past 4 weeks, those who have been discouraged after months of searching, as well as those who are only passively looking, scrolling through job boards but not submitting any applications. At the same time, employment figures include anyone who worked at least 1 hour as a paid employee, at least 1 hour self-employed, or worked without pay for a family business. Unlike hiring in private companies, where hiring decisions are by and large only made to the benefit of the firm, family companies operate under different dynamics. They may prioritize familial ties over professional merit, or hire with less scrutiny, because implicit trust underpins the hiring process, making the inclusion of workers of family businesses into employment figures an inaccurate representation of how well the job market is doing. Currently, year-over-year inflation stands at 2.7%. Dropping below 3% for the first time since April 2021 in June of 2024. While decreasing inflation is good, what people forget is that positive inflation continues to increase prices, and the accumulated price increases from the inflation of the past 3 years still exist. While the government rightly cites declining inflation as a positive indicator for the economy, we need to remember that decreasing inflation does not undo the economic damage from the past. In sum, while headline figures like low unemployment rates, declining inflation, stock market highs, and wage growth might suggest a thriving economy, a closer examination reveals a labor market riddled with challenges. The job market has not fully recovered from the pandemic's impact, and structural issues like underemployment, stagnant labor force participation, and an over-reliance on low-paying job growth continue to undermine economic stability for many. These challenges bring us to the golden question: why is the job market the way it is today? Recruiting for competitive jobs has always been challenging, but the current state of the job market is marked by unprecedented extremes. The fundamental issue at hand is a crisis with supply and demand. On one hand, there's an increase in the supply of labor, with more people entering the workforce than ever. On the other hand, demand for workers is shrinking as companies grapple with the fallout of pandemic-era hiring decisions. During COVID, businesses overhired to meet the booming demand in a low interest rate environment. But as the Federal Reserve raised interest rates in the years that followed, these same companies were forced to tighten budgets, resulting in widespread layoffs and hiring freezes. This imbalance between labor supply and demand has created the perfect storm for job seekers, making today's market especially difficult to navigate. This brings us to the reality of today's job market, what many are calling recruiting hell. The surplus of applicants, combined with fewer available roles, has created an unprecedented level of competition, making the job-seeking process more grueling than ever. The internet has played a valuable role in leveling the playing field, by lowering the costs to sending an application down to an internet connection and a couple minutes of your time. Applications, in turn, have become easier to complete and submit in bulk, with well-known companies benefiting from the influx of candidates eager to secure a coveted role. However, this ease of applying has contributed to the deflation of each applicant's value, as platforms like LinkedIn see entry-level to associate-level job postings attract hundreds of submissions within hours of the post date. Sites like Wall Street Oasis and influential TikTok creators have demystified and popularized the recruiting processes for industries like finance, consulting, and tech, encouraging more individuals than ever to enter these already competitive fields. This democratization of knowledge has broadened the pool of applicants and heightened the competition, leaving many job seekers struggling to differentiate themselves in an already saturated and competitive job market. Higher education has been a mainstay in the American path to economic success for decades, but with over half of graduates remaining underemployed over a year following graduation, its promise as a reliable vehicle for upward mobility is increasingly called into question. As more students earn degrees, the oversupply of graduates has diluted the market value of these credentials, leaving many struggling to find roles that align with their education and skill level. Over time, this will contribute to a large backlog of dissatisfied graduates and to the competition for a higher-paying white-collar job. This disconnect between expectations and reality has forced a growing number of graduates into jobs that neither require nor adequately reward their qualifications, fueling frustration and skepticism about the true value of a college education in today's economy. The growing pool of graduates has also contributed to qualification inflation. Colleges, by and large, aim to instill critical thinking and problem-solving skills, but many degrees, especially outside of specialized fields like medicine or research, offer content largely disconnected from real-world applications. In disciplines like computer science or finance, coursework often delves into theoretical areas irrelevant to job-specific skills. This forces students to largely study on their own, teaching themselves the practical knowledge in preparation for internships or employment. Many employers know this and avoid hiring new graduates during uncertain economic periods to avoid the investment of training a new employee. This in turn creates a bottleneck at the entry level, preventing new graduates from getting their foot in the door of the industry they want to work in, and is further reflected through smaller graduate role class sizes. Given the difficulty of assessing candidates' true qualifications, hiring teams rely on proxies like grades, school rankings, and perceived rigor of majors to screen applicants. Industries such as finance and consulting illustrate this most clearly, with target schools dominating hiring pipelines. A quick glance at top firms' employee rosters reveals a strong connection of alumni from the top 20 global schools. Unsurprisingly, the odds of receiving an interview skew heavily in favor of candidates from these prestigious institutions. Universities and colleges have capitalized on this trend, introducing a proliferation of terminal master's programs designed to serve as credential boosters. These 1 to 2 year, high tuition programs, especially in business fields like management, finance, and marketing, cater to students eager to enhance their resumes and align themselves with elite brands. Schools like the University of Chicago, which launched a new Master's in Management and Master's in Finance program in 2024, reflect this growing demand. However, the value of these degrees lies less in the educational content and more in the prestige associated with the institution. As program enrollments and class sizes expand, the once differentiating power of these degrees diminish. The result is a vicious cycle of overqualification. Graduates are incentivized to invest in additional schooling to compete in an oversaturated market. But the proliferation of those very same degrees further devalues their worth. The market signals to students that more education is necessary to stand out, even as the tangible benefits of that education wane. Many pursue these credentials in hopes that an improved economy or the added line on their resume will ultimately make a difference when it comes to the hiring process. Though for many, the return on those investments is elusive. On the demand side, the post-pandemic job market has been shaped by a perfect storm of overhiring during the COVID-19 era, evolving corporate strategies, and macroeconomic pressures. Initially, companies expanded their workforces so rapidly in response to pandemic-driven demand surges and near-zero interest rate policies. However, as the Federal Reserve began hiking rates to combat inflation, businesses were forced to reassess their hiring strategies, leading to significant layoffs and hiring freezes. This adjustment, while rational in the context of economic pressures, has had a negative cascading effect on job seekers. At the macro level, companies exist to maximize profits. Hiring decisions are driven by either the need to grow the firm or to replace existing employees. However, corporate greed and a lack of long-term vision have exacerbated the imbalance in today's job market. Despite overall economic growth in late 2022, many firms have realized they can maintain or even increase profitability by operating with smaller, leaner teams. The gradual financialization of the economy and companies' subsequent shift in focus onto primarily short-term gains has made those same companies hesitant to scale up their workforces, choosing instead to delay startup dates, implement hiring freezes, understaff projects, and rely on short-term solutions such as automation, contingent workers, and offshoring. Rather than investing in training and development of employees for the long term, companies have adopted a plug-and-play hiring philosophy, favoring candidates who already have specific role-relevant experience, laying off workers and pausing hiring whenever revenues dip, offshoring jobs overseas and to AI whenever they can, all to ensure that profits continue growing. It's this myopic worldview that will help earnings in the short term, but in the long term reduces the product's quality. This thinking has led to a reduction in the number of entry-level hires, creating a chicken and egg dilemma for job seekers. Firms want experienced candidates, but gaining that experience often requires opportunities that are increasingly scarce. Even internships now demand prior experience, effectively barring many from even entering the career pipeline. The rise of ghost job postings further muddies the waters. Many companies list positions they have no immediate intention of filling, either to build a pool of potential candidates or to gather applicant data. For job seekers, this creates a demoralizing cycle of applying for roles that don't actually exist without knowing they don't exist, wasting time and effort in a system that feels increasingly opaque and inefficient. To manage the recent influx of applicants, recruiters have leaned heavily on automation and standardized assessments. Applicant tracking systems, or ATS, are used to sift through resumes, often reducing candidates through a handful of algorithmically selected phrases, leaving them guessing about which combination of keywords and phrases will help them pass screening. Behavioral assessments, pre-recorded video interviews from software sites like HireVue, and technical tests add further hurdles, many of which have questionable relevance to the actual job at hand while squandering hours of the candidate's time for preparation, adding to the time spent per application. While these shortcuts may help recruiters cope with the overwhelming applicant pools, they also alienate candidates, leaving many to feel judged on factors entirely outside of their control rather than on their actual qualifications or potential. Traditionally negligible aspects of a candidate's application, like a missing keyword or a resume that simply didn't catch the recruiter's eye, become sufficient grounds to pass an applicant over. In a market oversaturated with candidates vying for increasingly scarce opportunities, these minor oversights carry disproportionate weight. With fewer available jobs and a glut of job applicants, the job search is already competitive enough. But the lack of jobs and heightened demand creates a situation where the threshold for hiring becomes much less predictable and more subject to arbitrary or subjective standards. Companies, under pressure to optimize costs and minimize risk for their shareholders, often shift their focus towards candidates who align perfectly with narrow criteria or who possess prestigious credentials. This inconsistency leaves job seekers guessing about which combination of qualifications, keywords, and experiences will get them through the initial stages of the hiring process, as a hiring bar fluctuates based on factors like internal policies, market trends, or simply recruiter discretion. This unpredictability exacerbates the frustration of job seekers, adding long hiring timelines to the challenges in an already daunting market. Many proposed solutions for job seekers focus on optimizing resumes for AI screeners or leveraging networks to secure referrals. However, these approaches are not without their own challenges. The use of applicant tracking systems by employers has made passing the initial stages of recruitment feel like a game of chance. While tools and guides exist to tailor resumes with relevant keywords, this process remains largely opaque. Candidates are ultimately left guessing which variables matter, making the exercise akin to black box testing. This not only consumes significant amounts of time and effort on the part of candidates, but also fosters frustration when these strategies fail. Networking and referrals have always been a powerful tool for job seekers, but their effectiveness have been diminished in a saturated market. Referrals, once a trusted endorsement, have become diluted in value, especially with the rise of free referral platforms like ReferMe. These platforms have made referrals more accessible, but simultaneously less meaningful. In many cases, referrals no longer grant a significant advantage, particularly when the job market overwhelmingly favors employers. For those without elite networks or institutional support, breaking into the job market increasingly requires sheer persistence. Unfortunately, structural changes such as reducing reliance on ATS, enhancing entry-level training programs, and emphasizing skills over pedigree will remain largely unaddressed. Today's job market is ultimately a numbers game, skewed heavily in favor of the top percent of applicants, those with prestigious degrees, stellar resumes, and access to influential networks. For everyone else, landing a job has become a significantly more grueling process marked by endless applications, arbitrary rejections, and dwindling job opportunities. The economic landscape post-pandemic has not fully recovered. Rather, it has reshaped itself to mask persistent inefficiencies and inequities. Fewer corporate roles exist now than ever before, and the reallocation of jobs into less lucrative sectors like education, hospitality, and gig work only highlights the gap between high-earning professionals and the underemployed masses. With the pool of applicants continuing to grow as graduates outpace demand and companies prioritize short-term profits over long-term workforce investments, the labor market is unlikely to balance out in the near future. This future reality is grim. Job postings no longer guarantee actual openings. Referrals and networking have lost much of their value, and the road to employment often hinges on privilege or sheer luck. Until systemic changes are made, whether through corporate policy, government intervention, or broader societal shifts, today's job seekers will remain caught in a cycle of relentless competition, opaque hiring practices, and diminishing returns. It's time for a collective rethinking of how we approach hiring, employment, and opportunity in an evolving economy.